My mother destroyed my college acceptance letters. Then she saw me accept a Nobel Prize on TV. My mother held the Stanford acceptance letter over the kitchen sink and flicked her lighter. The thick cream paper caught fire instantly, the embossed seal bubbling black. She didn't look at me, just watched it burn like junk mail, then turned on the faucet and washed the ashes down the drain. Then she grabbed the next envelope. MIT, same lighter, same sink, same dead expression. I'm Dr. Malika Reeves, and this is how my mother tried to destroy my future and accidentally created the scientist who'd prove her wrong on live television watched by 8 million people. She burned all 6 acceptance letters that Saturday morning. Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Princeton, Yale, Harvard. Every single one offering full scholarships for biochemistry. She'd waited for me to come home from my library shift specifically so I could watch. She said college was a waste for girls like us, that I'd just get pregnant and drop out anyway, that she'd done fine without education and so would I. She worked 3 jobs cleaning houses while we lived on food bank donations and subsidized housing. Her version of fine and mine were very different universes. I tried to grab the Princeton letter. She shoved me into the counter hard enough that pain shot through my ribs. Then she burned it while I held my side trying to breathe. When all 6 were ash, she said I had 2 weeks to find a full-time job or get out. I was 18 now, legally an adult. She'd done her duty. I had $340 saved and no car. My phone was on her plan. Every document I needed was locked in her filing cabinet. She'd timed this perfectly for a Saturday, so I couldn't even call the schools until Monday. She'd been planning this since I started bringing home straight A's in middle school. My success threatened whatever story she'd told herself about our lives. That night, I taught myself everything about replacing destroyed acceptance letters. Our spotty internet kept disconnecting, but I found enough. The schools had records of my acceptance, but without original letters containing scholarship codes and enrollment details, everything would be complicated. I'd need to contact each office individually, prove my identity, request replacements. All while my mother controlled my mail and phone access. The trap was elegant and thorough. Sunday morning, I walked 3 miles to the public library before it opened and waited on the steps. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the reference librarian who'd supervised my work shifts, found me there at 7 a.m. looking like I'd been crying all night. Because I had been. She asked what was wrong and I broke completely. Told her about the burned letters, the 2-week ultimatum, everything. She said 3 words. We fix this. She drove me to her house and let me use her office to make calls. It was Sunday, so admissions offices were closed, but I left detailed voicemails at all 6 schools. Family emergency, documents destroyed. Here's every piece of identifying information you need to verify me. Dr. Morrison sat through every call taking notes. When I finished, she made grilled cheese and told me about her own mother who'd said girls didn't need PhDs. She'd gotten hers anyway and spent 30 years in pharmaceutical research before retiring. She said some parents can't handle their children surpassing them, can't celebrate success they never achieved. The validation made me cry again. Monday morning I went to school, but my mind was gone. I'd left my phone at home because I didn't trust my mother not to check it. Dr. Morrison said she'd take messages if schools called the library. At lunch, I checked email on the school computer. Stanford had already responded. They confirmed my acceptance and would send replacement documentation to whatever address I provided. But my full scholarship was contingent on accepting by April 15th, 3 weeks away. If I didn't formally accept and submit enrollment paperwork by then, they'd offer my spot to someone else. 3 weeks to figure out housing, transportation to California, and how to escape my mother's control. My guidance counselor found me crying in the computer lab and pulled me into his office. Mr. Anderson had written one of my recommendation letters. I told him everything and watched his face cycle through disbelief to rage. He called CPS immediately, reported my mother for educational neglect and emotional abuse. The CPS worker said, since I was 18, I was legally an adult. They couldn't intervene in what they classified as a family disagreement. Mr. Anderson argued for 20 minutes but got nowhere. The system didn't protect 18-year-olds from abusive parents. We were old enough to be kicked out, but not old enough for most assistance programs. The gap was intentional. Dr. Morrison offered me her guest room that afternoon. I almost collapsed from relief. That night, I went home one last time while my mother was at work. I knew her filing cabinet code because she used the same 4 digits for everything. Her birth year. Inside, I found my birth certificate, social security card, immunization records, and surprisingly, my passport from when I was 6. I took everything, plus the only photos of my grandmother who died when I was 12. Left a note saying I was staying with a friend. A lie to buy time so she wouldn't report me as a runaway. Everything I owned fit in one backpack and a trash bag. I texted from Dr. Morrison's phone saying I'd be back Sunday, then blocked her number and never went home again. Stanford sent replacement documentation by overnight mail. My financial aid covered everything. Tuition, room, board, even a book stipend. I accepted immediately. Filled out every form, sent everything back certified mail. MIT and CALTECH sent similar packages. But I'd already committed. 3 weeks of constant emails and phone calls to replace what my mother destroyed in 3 minutes. But eventually it was official. I was going to Stanford, and she couldn't stop it because she didn't know where I lived anymore. She showed up at the library 6 days later, demanded to know where I was, accused Dr. Morrison of kidnapping. Dr. Morrison calmly said I was an adult who'd left an unsafe situation and she wouldn't be providing information about my location. My mother threatened police. Dr. Morrison said call them. They'll confirm she's 18 and can make her own decisions. My mother left screaming about betrayal and lawsuits that never materialized. She tried my high school, but Mr. Anderson had already notified the office she wasn't allowed access to my records. She tried everything except the one thing that might have worked: apologizing. That never occurred to her because she didn't think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she'd protected me from wasting time on impossible dreams. I graduated valedictorian in June with a 4.0 and perfect SATs. My mother didn't attend. Dr. Morrison did, along with Mr. Anderson and library staff who'd helped me. I gave my speech about overcoming obstacles and thanked my teachers without mentioning family once. The local newspaper ran a story about my Stanford scholarship. That's probably how my mother found out where I was going. She left 3 voicemails on Dr. Morrison's home phone over the summer. First one congratulated me sarcastically. Said I'd gotten what I wanted. Hoped I was happy throwing away family. Second was angrier. I'd abandoned her after everything she'd sacrificed. Third came in late July. Different tone. She'd been diagnosed with lupus. Needed help with medical bills. Family takes care of family. Dr. Morrison asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. I left for Stanford in August with $2,000 from library work and 1 suitcase. Dr. Morrison drove me to the airport and hugged me hard enough to restart the crying. She said she'd see me at graduation in 4 years. I believed her because she'd never lied to me. The flight to San Francisco was my first time on a plane since I was 6. I spent it staring out the window thinking about how far I'd come in 5 months, from watching my future burn to flying toward it. Stanford was overwhelming. Beautiful buildings, students from everywhere, resources I couldn't have imagined. My dorm room was small but mine. A desk, bookshelf, window overlooking a courtyard. My roommate was from Oregon studying computer science. First-generation college student who'd fought to be there. We bonded immediately. I threw myself into coursework with intensity that concerned professors. Maximum credits every quarter. Research lab volunteer work. Part-time library job. Rarely slept more than 5 hours. Spent weekends in labs instead of socializing. Winter quarter freshman year, my advisor called me in. Asked if I was okay. I said fine, just focused. She said I seemed scared, like someone might take this away if I didn't prove myself constantly. She was right. I was terrified Stanford would realize they'd made a mistake. That my mother would show up and destroy this future like she'd destroyed the letters. The fear drove excellence but isolated me completely. My research focus emerged sophomore year in Dr. Helena Okonkwo's lab studying autoimmune diseases. She was a brilliant Nigerian immunologist who'd made groundbreaking lupus discoveries. I didn't mention my mother's diagnosis, just said I was interested in autoimmune research. She assigned me a protein project and I essentially moved into her lab. Arrived at 6 a.m., left at midnight. Running experiments, analyzing data, reading every paper on immune dysfunction. Dr. Okonkwo noticed and started giving me graduate-level projects. By junior year, I was first author on a paper in a mid-tier immunology journal. By senior year, I'd co-authored 3 more and been accepted to Stanford's PhD program with full funding. Dr. Morrison came to my undergraduate graduation like she'd promised. Thinner, slower, but same smile. Said she'd always known I'd do this. I introduced her to Dr. Okonkwo, who thanked her for supporting me. They talked about mentorship for 20 minutes while I felt grateful and guilty. Grateful for intervention. Guilty, I hadn't stayed connected through 4 years of intense focus. I promised to visit more. She laughed and said I was exactly where I needed to be. Graduate school was more intense than undergraduate. Dr. Okonkwo's lab was pursuing a lupus theory that contradicted established models. She needed data to support her hypothesis. I designed experiments testing environmental factors on immune cell protein expression, looking for patterns explaining why lupus developed in some people but not others. The work was tedious and frustrating. Same experiments dozens of times with slight variations. My first 2 years produced nothing publishable, just negative results and dead ends. Other students published breakthroughs while my work stalled. Dr. Okonkwo kept saying science was mostly failure. Every negative result ruled out possibilities. I understood intellectually, but felt like I was wasting time and funding. The breakthrough came 3rd year almost by accident. Running enzyme assays on immune cells exposed to environmental stressors when I noticed an unexpected protein interaction. Only appeared under very specific conditions, probably contamination or measurement error. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Repeated the experiment 50 times with increasingly controlled conditions. The interaction appeared consistently. Brought it to Dr. Okonkwo, who got excited in her quiet, intense way. Said this could be the mechanism we'd been searching for. The trigger explaining lupus onset. We spent 18 months characterizing this protein interaction and downstream effects. I lived in the lab, slept on the break room couch when experiments ran overnight. My social life disappeared. My health declined from stress and poor sleep. But the data kept getting better. We were seeing clear causal pathway from environmental trigger to immune dysfunction. More importantly, identifying intervention points where drugs could interrupt the disease process. By 4th year, we had enough for a major publication. Co-wrote a paper for Nature Immunology describing findings and implications for lupus treatment. Peer review took 8 months and was brutal. Reviewers questioned methods, demanded additional experiments, pushed back hard against conclusions challenging existing theories. We addressed every concern methodically, ran new experiments, provided more data. Finally, the paper was accepted, published January of my 5th PhD year, with me as first author. The paper exploded. Our findings offered the first comprehensive explanation for lupus triggers and suggested therapeutic approaches pharmaceutical companies immediately began exploring. I started getting journalist interviews and conference invitations. Dr. Okonkwo said, say yes to everything. Visibility matters for young scientists. I defended my dissertation in May to a packed room. 3 hours of detailed methodology questions. When it finished, my committee said my work represented significant contribution to the field. I was Dr. Malika Reeves now with job offers from institutions across the country. I chose a postdoc at the National Institutes of Health in Maryland, working with a team developing lupus therapeutics based on our findings. translating basic science into actual treatments. We ran trials testing drugs targeting the protein pathway I'd identified. Early results were promising. Patients showed reduced inflammation and symptom improvement without severe side effects of traditional immunosuppressants. By second postdoc year, we had enough positive data to publish and move toward FDA approval. The pharmaceutical company funding research rushed to market. I was listed as co-inventor on the patent, which meant royalties if approved. Financial implications were staggering, but money felt less important than knowing my research might help people. Dr. Morrison died during my third postdoc year. Her sister called saying she'd had a stroke. Passed peacefully. The funeral was small, but she'd left instructions I'd be notified. Her sister gave me a box of things she'd saved from my high school years. Research papers, library photos, my valedictorian speech. She'd kept everything. There was also a letter written 6 months before her death. She'd followed my career closely, read every paper, felt proud each time, said she'd known from the first biochemistry textbook request that I was special. Never regretted helping me escape my mother's control. Watching me succeed gave her life renewed purpose after her husband died. The letter ended with encouragement to keep pushing forward. Never let anyone make me small. Family was chosen, not just inherited. I read it alone and cried for the first time in years. The lupus drug completed phase 3 trials 4th postdoc year and received FDA approval. The pharmaceutical company launched it with massive marketing highlighting effectiveness and reduced side effects. My name was in patent documentation and research papers. Journalists called for interviews. I did a few profiles explaining the science and emphasizing Dr. Okonkwo's mentorship. Mostly stayed focused on research. Drug royalties started coming. Quarterly payments, more money than I'd seen in my life combined. I paid off minimal debt, bought a condo in Bethesda, set up a scholarship fund at my high school for science students. The rest I invested. Still not believing this was real and permanent. I'd spent so many years in survival mode that financial security felt surreal. My research evolved from lupus to broader autoimmune mechanisms. Published papers on rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, always looking for common pathways explaining why immune systems attacked bodies. The work was painstaking but rewarding, each discovery building on previous findings. I collaborated with researchers worldwide. By late 30s, I'd published over 50 papers, received multiple grants, was recognized as a leading voice in autoimmune research. The MacArthur Fellowship notification came on a Wednesday morning in September. A woman called saying I'd been selected as a MacArthur Fellow. $625,000 over 5 years with no strings attached for my research. I thought it was a scam. She provided verification. It was legitimate. The MacArthur Genius Grant was one of the most prestigious awards in American science. The news became public the next day. My phone rang constantly with congratulations and interviews. The attention was uncomfortable but validated years of work that often felt invisible. Then came the email that changed everything. Subject line, Nobel Prize nomination. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before opening. A colleague from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden writing to inform me I'd been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. My work on autoimmune disease mechanisms had fundamentally changed how the medical community understood immune system dysfunction. The nomination itself was an honor. Actually, winning was statistically unlikely. Hundreds of scientists got nominated annually. Only 3 won. I filed it mentally under nice but impossible and went back to research. My lab was exploring whether the protein pathway I'd discovered in lupus appeared in other autoimmune conditions. Early data suggested yes. We might be looking at a universal mechanism underlying multiple diseases. If we were right, treatments I'd developed for lupus could be adapted for dozens of other conditions. The implications were staggering. 6 months later, I got another email. This one from the Nobel Committee. More formal, requesting updated CV and publication list. Standard procedure for finalists, they said. My hands shook typing the response. I told my postdoc supervisor who congratulated me but cautioned that finalist status didn't mean winning. Most finalists never won. I shouldn't get my hopes up. I didn't. Or I tried not to. But some small desperate part of me that had watched acceptance letters burn 15 years ago whispered, what if? The Nobel Committee called on a Monday morning in October at 5:47 a.m. A Swedish accent saying, congratulations, I'd been awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for my discoveries concerning autoimmune disease mechanisms and therapeutic applications. The prize would be shared with 2 other scientists who'd made related contributions, but my work was cited as the breakthrough that catalyzed the field. The ceremony would be in Stockholm in December. Was I available to attend? I said yes in a voice that didn't sound like mine. They said the announcement would be public in 30 minutes. I should prepare for media attention. Then they hung up and I sat on my bedroom floor trying to process that I'd just won the Nobel Prize, the most prestigious award in science, at 38 years old. For work, that started because my mother had lupus and I'd wanted to understand why. My phone started ringing before the 30 minutes were up. News had leaked. Colleagues, journalists, my research institution, everyone wanted comments. I ignored all of it and called the one person I wanted to tell. Dr. Okonkwo answered on the second ring. I said, I won. She screamed. Actually screamed with joy, and then started crying. Said she'd known when I was her undergraduate running experiments at midnight that I was going to do something extraordinary. But Nobel Prize extraordinary exceeded even her expectations. We stayed on the phone for an hour talking about the research journey and everyone who'd supported it. I wish Dr. Morrison was alive to hear this. She'd believed in me when I had nothing. Gave me the foundation everything else was built on. The media attention after the Nobel announcement was overwhelming. Every major news outlet wanted interviews. Science magazines wanted profiles. My face was suddenly on magazine covers and news websites. The attention felt surreal and uncomfortable. I wasn't used to being visible. I'd spent my career hiding in labs running experiments. Now I was being called a genius and a groundbreaker and an inspiration. The story that kept getting repeated was my background. First-generation college student from poverty who'd overcome obstacles to revolutionize autoimmune research. Journalists loved the narrative arc from struggling to success. What they didn't know yet was the specific obstacle I'd overcome, that my own mother had literally burned my college acceptance letters trying to prevent this exact future. I hadn't told anyone that story except Dr. Morrison and a few close friends. It felt too personal, too raw. But as the Nobel ceremony approached and media requests intensified, I realized this was a platform I'd never have again. Millions of people would be watching, and somewhere in subsidized housing in my hometown, my mother would be one of them. The idea formed slowly, a way to acknowledge what happened without being cruel, a way to tell the truth about obstacles without making it about revenge. I drafted my Nobel acceptance speech carefully over 6 weeks, wrote and rewrote every word, showed it to Dr. Okonkwo, who cried reading it, showed it to my therapist, who said it was powerful and healing, kept the most important detail for the end, the part my mother wouldn't see coming. The Nobel ceremony was in Stockholm in December. The venue was stunning. Hundreds of people in formal wear, Swedish royalty, international media, cameras everywhere. I wore a simple black gown and tried not to throw up from nerves. When they called my name to accept the award, I walked to the podium with my speech folded in my pocket. Started by thanking the Nobel Committee and my fellow laureates, thanked Dr. Okonkwo and my research teams, thanked the patients whose suffering motivated the work. Then I took a breath and told the story I'd never told publicly. When I was 18, I received acceptance letters from 6 universities offering full scholarships to study biochemistry. I was the first person in my family to attend college. I was so proud. I thought my parent would be proud too. Pause. Let it land. Instead, my mother burned every single acceptance letter in the kitchen sink, one by one, while I watched. She said college was a waste for girls like us, that I should get a job instead. She gave me 2 weeks to find work or she'd kick me out. The room was completely silent. I'm standing here today because one librarian believed in me when my own mother didn't. Dr. Patricia Morrison gave me a safe place to live and helped me rebuild my future from ashes. Literally. She passed away 5 years ago. But this award is as much hers as mine? She saw potential in a terrified teenager and refused to let it be destroyed. I held up the Nobel Prize medal. This represents 15 years of research into autoimmune diseases. Diseases like the lupus my mother was diagnosed with the summer I left for Stanford. The same mother who tried to prevent me from getting the education that led to treatments that might help her and millions of others. The irony hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. I'm not sharing this story for sympathy or to shame anyone. I'm sharing it because there are kids watching this who have parents who don't believe in them, who actively work against their dreams, who say their ambitions are impossible or wasteful. I want those kids to know that your family's lack of vision doesn't determine your future. Your potential isn't limited by their fears. My voice was steady now. Strong. Find your Dr. Morrison. Find the teachers, librarians, counselors, mentors who see what you're capable of becoming. Build your family from people who celebrate your success instead of sabotaging it. And know that the obstacles meant to stop you can become the fuel that drives you further than anyone imagined possible. I paused and looked directly at the camera, knowing my mother was watching somewhere, knowing she'd recognize herself in every word. To everyone who tried to make me small, thank you. You made me resilient instead. You taught me that belief in myself matters more than anyone else's approval. And you gave me a story worth telling at the pinnacle of my career. I held up the medal again. This is what happens when you try to destroy someone's future by burning their acceptance letters. Sometimes they don't just recover. Sometimes they win the Nobel Prize. The room erupted in applause. Standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. I walked off the podium shaking but satisfied. The speech would be broadcast globally, translated into dozens of languages, watched by millions. And somewhere in her living room, my mother was watching her daughter accept the world's highest scientific honor while telling everyone exactly what she'd done to try to prevent it. The speech went viral within hours, clips on every social media platform, news outlets running headlines about the Nobel laureate whose mother burned her college letters, education advocates sharing it as proof that family sabotage doesn't have to be destiny, students reaching out saying the story gave them hope. My inbox filled with thousands of messages from people who'd faced similar obstacles, parents who hadn't believed in them, families who'd actively worked against their dreams. They said seeing someone succeed despite that kind of betrayal made their own struggles feel less isolating. The validation was overwhelming. I hadn't realized how many people carried similar wounds. 3 days after the ceremony, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Silence on the other end. Then my mother's voice, smaller than I remembered. I watched your speech. More silence. I waited. I didn't know you felt that way about the letters. I thought I was protecting you. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, framing destruction as protection. I could have screamed, could have listed every way she'd failed me. Instead, I said very calmly, you burned my future because you couldn't stand that I wanted more than you'd achieved. That's not protection. That's cruelty. And the fact that you still can't admit it tells me everything I need to know about whether we'll ever have a relationship. She started to argue. I hung up, blocked the number, sat there feeling lighter than I had in years. The Nobel Prize brought opportunities I couldn't have imagined. Universities offering endowed chairs, research institutions offering blank check lab budgets, pharmaceutical companies wanting collaborations. I chose a position at Johns Hopkins, directing a new autoimmune research center with funding to hire 20 scientists and pursue any projects we wanted. I used the platform to advocate for first-generation college students and survivors of family abuse. Started a foundation providing housing and support for teenagers cut off by parents for pursuing education. Named it the Patricia Morrison Foundation in honor of the librarian who'd saved me. We helped 50 students that first year, 100 the second. Within 5 years, we'd assisted over 1,000 young people escaping families that tried to limit their potential. Each one was Dr. Morrison's legacy extending further. The Nobel Prize money was substantial. I donated most of it to the foundation and to scholarships for science students from low-income backgrounds, kept enough to buy a house and establish financial security. Money beyond that felt meaningless. I had everything I needed: a lab, brilliant colleagues, resources to pursue questions that fascinated me. The external validation was nice, but ultimately empty compared to the satisfaction of research itself. My mother tried reaching out twice more over the next year. Once through my brother, who I'd barely spoken to in 2 decades. Once through a letter sent to Johns Hopkins. Both times trying to rewrite history, claiming she'd always supported me, that I'd misunderstood her intentions. That family should forgive. I never responded. Some bridges should stay burned. 10 years after winning the Nobel Prize, I'm 58 and running one of the most productive autoimmune research centers in the world. We've developed treatments for 6 different autoimmune conditions based on that original protein pathway I discovered in graduate school. Helped millions of patients live better lives with less pain and fewer side effects. Published over 200 papers. Trained the next generation of immunologists who will push the field further than I could alone. I think about my mother sometimes. Wonder if she follows my work or pretends I don't exist. Wonder if she understood what she destroyed that day in the kitchen, or if she still believes she was right. It doesn't matter anymore. She's a footnote in my origin story. The villain who accidentally created her own opposite by trying to limit me. The obstacle that taught me I didn't need her approval to succeed. I think about Dr. Morrison more often. Wish she'd lived to see the Nobel Prize and everything that came after. She'd saved my life with 3 words. We fix this. Refused to let someone else's cruelty be the end of my story. Showed me that family was people who showed up and believed in you, not just people who shared DNA. Her legacy lived in every student the foundation helped and every researcher I mentored. I think about the acceptance letters burning. How the flames had felt like the end of everything. How my mother had watched with that blank expression like she was taking out trash. How I'd stood there shaking, unable to process that my own parent wanted me to fail. The memory doesn't hurt anymore. It's just information now. Data about what happened and how I survived it. Sometimes pain transforms into fuel if you're angry enough and stubborn enough and lucky enough to find people who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. My life became extraordinary, not despite my mother's sabotage, but because of it. She gave me a story worth telling. A concrete example of how family betrayal doesn't have to be destiny. Proof that burning someone's future just makes them build a better one from the ashes. I won the Nobel Prize. My face is in textbooks. My research changed medicine. Students study my methods. Patients thank me for treatments that gave them their lives back. And my mother gets to watch all of it knowing she tried to prevent it. Knowing that if she'd just let me go to Stanford peacefully, I might have been moderately successful. But by trying to destroy me, she made me determined to succeed so completely that she could never claim credit or rewrite history. Every award I win, every paper I publish, every life my research improves is proof that she was wrong. That college wasn't a waste. That I was capable of exactly what I believed I could do. That her fear and smallness couldn't limit someone who refused to be limited. The burned letters were supposed to be my ending. Instead, they were my beginning. The moment I learned that I could survive without her. That I was strong enough to rebuild from nothing. That my worth wasn't determined by whether my mother believed in me. She gave me that gift accidentally, and I've built an entire career on it. So in a way, I should thank her. For burning the letters, for kicking me out, for forcing me to find Dr. Morrison and all the other people who actually wanted me to succeed. For teaching me that the people who should support you sometimes won't, and you have to build your family from better materials. The Nobel Prize acceptance speech was watched by 8 million people live and millions more online afterward. My mother was somewhere in that audience watching her daughter tell the world exactly what she'd done. Watching me hold up the highest achievement in science and explain how her cruelty had motivated it. That image is the one I return to when I doubt myself. My mother sitting alone in whatever apartment she lives in now, watching me on television accepting an award she tried to prevent me from ever being eligible for, realizing that burning my acceptance letters didn't destroy my future. It just ensured she wouldn't be part of it. And that sometimes, when you try to make someone small, you accidentally teach them how to become extraordinary instead. This is what happens when you underestimate your children. When you confuse limitation with love. When you destroy their dreams thinking you're protecting them. You're still here, you're a true fan? Show some support with a like and subscribe to catch the next one.